In the mists of time, long before memory began for humankind, there was only the vastness and the power of Olodumare. Olodumare was the supreme being, the creator of all things that were, and all things that would ever come to be. The world that Olodumare first fashioned was a place of perfect harmony and unending existence. In this early world, the sun rose and set with gentle grace, the rivers flowed with sweet water, and the forests were lush and green. Animals roamed freely and people lived without the shadow of fear or the pain of loss. There was no sickness, no old age as we know it, and certainly no death. Life was a continuous stream, unchanging and eternal. The air itself was filled with a quiet joy, a sense of peace that permeated every living creature and every rustling leaf. Children were born, they grew, but they did not wither. Families stayed together, generation after generation, living side by side in an endless present. Imagine a world where you never had to say goodbye to a loved one, where the idea of an ending was simply not understood. This was the first design of Olodumare. The mountains stood tall and proud, never eroding, and the oceans whispered ancient secrets, their shores untouched by the sorrow of departure. It was a world of pure, unadulterated existence, a testament to Olodumare's initial vision of perfection. The people of this timeless land did not count the years, for years had no meaning when life stretched infinitely before them. They learned the ways of the earth, the secrets of the plants, and the languages of the animals, all without the pressing need to pass on knowledge before a final sleep. Every day was like the one before it in its beauty and its promise of continuity. This was a gift, a world bathed in the light of Olodumare's benevolence. The concept of the end was an alien thought, a whisper from a different kind of existence that had not yet touched their reality. They lived, they loved, and they simply were, in a state of perpetual grace. However, this unbroken continuity, this endless sameness, began to occupy Olodumare's thoughts. While perfection was achieved in one sense, the world lacked a certain dynamism, a cycle that often brings renewal and appreciation. Olodumare looked upon this creation, a world without the punctuation of endings, and pondered if this was truly the complete expression of life. The absence of death meant an absence of the preciousness that comes with limited time. It was from this divine contemplation that a new idea began to form, an idea that would forever alter the destiny of all living things on the earth Olodumare had so carefully crafted for them. Olodumare, in the boundless wisdom that encompassed all of existence, observed the world of eternal life. It was, in many ways, a perfect creation. Yet, Olodumare saw that without endings, there could be no true appreciation for beginnings. Without the cycle of life and departure, the very essence of renewal was missing. The world, though peaceful, was static. Olodumare considered that growth and change were also vital aspects of existence. The sky, though always clear, never knew the beauty of a storm followed by a rainbow. The forest, though always green, never experienced the vibrant colors of autumn leaves giving way to new spring shoots. This lack of change was a gentle stagnation. The Supreme Being understood that, for life to have a deeper meaning, for each moment to be cherished, there needed to be a sense of its preciousness, its finite nature. If everything lasted forever, then nothing was truly special. The first laugh of a child, the wisdom of an elder, the beauty of a sunset, all these would lose some of their profound impact if they were simply part of an unending sequence. Olodumare reasoned that mortality, the knowledge that life has an end, would introduce a new kind of beauty, a new kind of urgency and appreciation. It would make beings value their time, their relationships, and their experiences more deeply. Therefore, Olodumare decided that a change was necessary. It was not a decision made out of cruelty, but out of a profound understanding of the universe and the nature of being. The introduction of death would complete the cycle of existence, birth, life, death, and then perhaps rebirth or a journey to another realm. This cycle would bring with it sorrow, yes, but also resilience, the passing on of legacies, and the sweet intensity of making the most of the time given. Olodumare knew this would be a difficult truth for the world to accept, a fundamental shift in the very fabric of their existence. The world needed to learn this new way, so the plan was set. Olodumare would send a message to the people of the earth. This message would inform them of the new order of things, the introduction of mortality. It was a heavy message, one that would change their understanding of everything. But Olodumare also considered that perhaps there should be a choice, or at least a reflection of the complexities of such a profound alteration. This led to the idea of not one, but two messengers, carrying tidings that would shape the destiny of humankind and all creatures. The very fabric of their eternal existence was about to be rewoven by the will of the Creator. Olodumare, having decided upon the introduction of mortality and the necessity of informing the world, now faced another important decision. Who should carry these vital messages? The nature of the messenger was almost as important as the message itself, for their characteristics would influence how the message was delivered and perhaps how it was received. Olodumare surveyed all the creatures of the earth, each with its unique talents and traits. There were the birds, swift and able to cover great distances but perhaps too flighty for a task of such gravity. There were the great beasts of the land, strong and imposing, but not all were known for their speed or reliability over long journeys. For the first message, the message that would introduce the concept of death, Olodumare sought a creature known for its incredible swiftness. This message, being a fundamental change to the order of life, needed to be delivered with a certain urgency, reflecting its profound impact. The antelope, with its long, graceful legs and its ability to run like the wind, came to Olodumare's mind. The antelope was a creature of speed and directness. It could cover vast plains and leap over obstacles with ease, ensuring that the message would reach the people without undue delay. Its nature was to move quickly, to not linger, which seemed fitting for news that would usher in a new, more transient era. Then Olodumare considered the second message. This message was to be different, a counterpoint, perhaps offering a different path or a modification to the first. For this, a different kind of messenger was required. Olodumare thought of the chameleon. The chameleon was not known for speed. Indeed, it was famous for its slow, deliberate movements. It was a creature of patience, observation, and careful steps. It changed its colors to blend with its surroundings, signifying adaptability but also a certain cautiousness. The chameleon represented a more measured, thoughtful approach, a stark contrast to the antelope's impulsive velocity. Olodumare decided this contrast was important. Thus, the two messengers were chosen, each embodying qualities that would shape the unfolding of this divine decree. The antelope would carry the news of mortality, a message that, once delivered, would likely take root quickly due to the messenger's speed. The chameleon would carry a message of eternal life, or perhaps a way to avoid death, a message that, due to the messenger's nature, would arrive much later. Olodumare understood the implications of this choice. The order of arrival, influenced by the speed of the messengers, could very well determine which message held sway over the hearts and minds of the people on Earth. Once Olodumare had made the selection, the antelope was summoned before the Supreme Being. The antelope stood respectfully, its keen eyes bright with anticipation, sensing the importance of the moment. Olodumare spoke, and the words were clear and solemn. "Antelope," Olodumare said, "I have a message of great importance for the people of the earth. You are swift, and you must carry this message with all the speed you possess. Go to them and tell them this. From this day forward, when people die, they shall die completely. They shall not rise again. This is the new way of the world." The antelope listened intently, its heart pounding not with fear, but with the urgency of the task. The antelope bowed its head in understanding and acceptance. It knew its own speed, its capacity to cover ground faster than almost any other creature. Without a moment's hesitation, without a single question, the antelope turned and began its journey. It did not pause to consider the weight of the message, nor did it dally along the path. Its sole focus was to reach the people of the earth as quickly as Olodumare had commanded. The plains blurred beneath its hooves, rivers were crossed in powerful leaps, and hills were surmounted with tireless energy. The wind whistled past its ears as it ran, a living embodiment of swiftness and duty. The journey was long, but the antelope's pace never faltered. It ran as if the fate of the world depended on its swift arrival, which in a way it did. The message it carried was a heavy one, a pronouncement that would forever alter the human experience, introducing sorrow and the finality of parting. Yet, the antelope as a messenger did not carry the emotional burden of the news, only the responsibility of its accurate and prompt delivery. It saw the distant settlements of humans, and its legs pumped even faster, eager to complete its sacred mission given by Olodumare. The world was still living in its timeless peace, unaware of the profound change that was racing towards them. Finally, breathless but triumphant in its speed, the antelope reached the first village of people. They gathered around, surprised by the sudden arrival of the swift creature, its sides heaving. The antelope wasted no time. It delivered the message exactly as Olodumare had instructed. "Hear this, people of the earth. Olodumare has decreed that from this day, when people die, they shall die completely. They shall not rise again." The words hung in the air, stark and unambiguous. Confusion, then shock, and then a dawning understanding spread through the assembled villagers. The antelope, its duty done, then turned and sped away, leaving the people to grapple with the new reality. Section 5. The Chameleon's Measured Pace, the Message of Eternal Life. Sometime after the antelope had departed on its urgent mission, Olodumare summoned the chameleon. The chameleon arrived slowly, each step placed with careful consideration, its large eyes swiveling independently, taking in everything. Olodumare looked upon this creature, so different from the antelope, and spoke with a gentle tone. "Chameleon," Olodumare began, "I also have a message for the people of the earth. It is a message of hope. You are to go to them and tell them this. Even if people should die, they will rise again. Their life will not be completely extinguished." This message was a counterpoint, a promise of return, a softening of the harsh finality. The chameleon listened, its skin subtly shifting in hue as it processed the divine words. It understood the gravity of its task, just as the antelope had. However, the chameleon's nature was not one of haste. It nodded its head slowly, a gesture of solemn acceptance. "I will go, great Olodumare," it replied, its voice as soft and deliberate as its movements. "I will carry your words to the people of the earth." And so the chameleon began its journey. It did not rush, it did not hurry. It moved with the same unhurried, methodical pace that defined its very being, each footfall carefully chosen. As the chameleon traveled, it did what chameleons do. It paused often, sometimes to catch an insect, its long tongue shooting out with surprising speed, a contrast to its otherwise slow progress. It stopped to observe the world around it, the rustling leaves, the passing clouds, the scurrying insects. It changed its colors to match the bark of a tree it was climbing or the green of a leaf it was resting upon. The message it carried was one of immense comfort, a promise of life beyond death, but its delivery was hampered by the messenger's inherent nature. Days turned into weeks, and the chameleon was still far from its destination, moving at its own unalterable rhythm. The world, meanwhile, was already absorbing the impact of the antelope's swift message. The news of final death was spreading from village to village, carried by word of mouth by travelers, and by the sheer weight of its pronouncement. The chameleon, unaware of the urgency created by the first message, continued its slow, deliberate journey. It was carrying a message that could have changed everything, that could have brought immense relief, but it was moving at a pace dictated by its own unchangeable character. The people of the earth were beginning to accept the first tidings, the harsh reality delivered by the swift antelope, while the message of hope lagged far behind. When the antelope delivered its message of mortality, the villagers were initially stunned into silence. The words, "die completely, and shall not rise again," echoed in the sudden quiet. These were concepts entirely new to them, foreign to their experience of an unending existence. They had known Olodumare as the source of all life, a benevolent creator. This new decree seemed harsh, almost cruel. Fear, a new and unsettling emotion, began to creep into their hearts. They looked at each other, at their children, at their elderly, and suddenly saw them not as eternal companions, but as beings whose time was now, somehow, limited. This was a shocking and unwelcome revelation. The news spread like wildfire, carried by the fastest runners from that first village to the next, and then the next. The antelope had been so swift, its message so direct and unambiguous, that it was hard to doubt. People gathered in hushed groups discussing this new grim reality. What did it mean to die completely? The very thought was terrifying. Some wept openly, mourning for a future they hadn't even realized was being taken away. Others tried to rationalize it, wondering if Olodumare had a reason they could not yet comprehend. The joy that had once permeated their lives began to be tinged with a newfound sorrow and anxiety about this unknown called death. The elders, who had lived countless seasons, found this news particularly difficult to bear. They had always been the keepers of wisdom, guiding the young through an endless existence. Now they were told that their own lives and the lives of everyone they knew would have an end. They tried to find comfort, to find meaning in this new order, but it was difficult. The message of the antelope was so clear, so stark, that it left little room for interpretation or hope of an alternative. It settled upon the people like a heavy shroud, changing the way they saw the world and their place within it. The perfect world was no longer perfect. As days turned into weeks, the people began, slowly and reluctantly, to accept this new truth. They started to observe the world differently. A wilting flower, once just a part of nature's tapestry, now seemed to echo the message of impermanence. The setting sun, once a promise of another identical day, now felt like a small farewell. The antelope's message, because it had arrived first and with such authority, began to take root deeply in their consciousness. They started to adjust their lives, their expectations, and their understanding of what it meant to be alive, all under the shadow of the finality that the swift messenger had brought. Much later, after the antelope's message of mortality had become an accepted, albeit sorrowful part of life, the chameleon finally arrived at the human settlements. It moved slowly into the village square, its skin shifting colors as it ambled along. The villagers, now accustomed to the idea of death, looked at the creature with mild curiosity, not expecting any news of great import. The chameleon, taking its time, eventually gathered an audience. It cleared its throat, a tiny, almost inaudible sound, and then began to deliver its message from Olodumare, the message it had carried so carefully and for so long. "People of the earth," the chameleon announced, its voice soft, "I bring you words from Olodumare. Even if people should die, they will rise again. Their life will not be completely extinguished." The villagers listened, and a ripple of confusion spread through them. This message was the complete opposite of what the antelope had told them. The antelope, so swift and sure, had said death was final. Now this slow, deliberate creature was telling them of a return, of life after death. Who were they to believe? The two messages were contradictory, creating a deep sense of unease and uncertainty. Some people felt a flicker of hope. Could it be true? Could the harsh reality they had come to accept be wrong? They desperately wanted to believe the chameleon's words, for they offered comfort and a return to something resembling their former endless existence. However, the antelope's message had arrived first. It had the power of primacy. It had settled into their hearts and minds, and they had already begun to live according to its truth. To overturn that now, based on the words of this very late and very slow messenger, seemed difficult. Doubt and debate began to arise among the people. The elders discussed the matter at length. They considered the nature of both messengers. The antelope was known for its speed, a quality that suggested urgency and importance. The chameleon was known for its slowness, its tendency to delay. Could it be that the chameleon's message, though perhaps intended by Olodumare, had arrived too late to change what had already been set in motion by the first, swifter pronouncement? The confusion was profound. Two messages from the same Olodumare, yet they spoke of entirely different fates. The villagers were caught between a harsh certainty and a hopeful but tardy possibility. The dilemma faced by the people was immense. Two divine messages, each claiming to be the will of Olodumare, presented them with opposing realities. One offered the grim finality of death, the other the comforting promise of resurrection. In their confusion, the people reasoned that Olodumare, the supreme being, would not intentionally mislead them with contradictory truths that held equal weight simultaneously. There had to be a reason for the sequence of the messages and the nature of the messengers. They pondered the significance of the antelope arriving first, so decisively and with such speed, while the chameleon had tarried. The elders, after much deliberation, proposed an understanding that seemed to make sense of the situation. They suggested that the first message to arrive and be accepted by the people was the one that would hold true. The antelope, by its swiftness, had ensured that its message of mortality was heard, processed, and integrated into their worldview before any alternative could be presented. The people had already begun to mourn, to adapt, and to see the world through the lens of this new, finite existence. The roots of this belief had grown deep in the short time since the antelope's arrival, watered by fear and resignation. Therefore they concluded with heavy hearts that the antelope's message must be the one that would stand. The chameleon's message, though beautiful and filled with hope, had simply arrived too late. The die had been cast. The world had already turned in the direction pointed by the first messenger. It was as if a path had been chosen, and once a significant distance had been traveled down that path, turning back to take the other fork became an almost impossible task. The power of the first word, especially a word delivered with such urgency and authority, had proven to be incredibly strong and binding. And so, humankind accepted the reality of death as a final state. They lamented the chameleon's slowness, thinking that if only it had been faster, their fate might have been different. Perhaps Olodumare had intended for there to be a race, a test of sorts, and the outcome was determined by the victor of that race. Or perhaps Olodumare knew that the first message heard would be the one embraced. Whatever the divine reasoning, the consequence was clear. The antelope's tidings became the law of life and death. The promise of resurrection brought by the chameleon became a wistful what if, a lingering echo of a different possibility that was lost to delay. The story of the antelope and the chameleon became more than just an explanation for the arrival of death in the world. It became a profound lesson, passed down from generation to generation, about the nature of messages, the importance of timeliness, and the enduring power of the first impression. The people learned that haste, embodied by the antelope, can have irreversible consequences. While speed can be a virtue in many circumstances, in this instance, it meant that a harsher truth was delivered and accepted before a more gentle one could be heard. The swiftness of the antelope cemented a reality that might have been altered by a more timely second message. The tale also highlighted the impact of the first message heard. Once an idea takes root in the collective consciousness, it is incredibly difficult to dislodge, even if subsequent information offers a more appealing alternative. The antelope's words, being the first pronouncement on the matter of life's duration, shaped the people's understanding so fundamentally that the chameleon's later message, however hopeful, could not overturn it. It teaches that what is said first often carries the most weight, setting the terms of any subsequent discussion or belief. This became a cautionary principle in their communication and decision-making processes. From this creation myth, people drew wisdom for their daily lives. They understood that important news should be delivered with care and consideration for its impact. They also learned that if one has good news, or a message that can bring comfort or positive change, it should not be delayed. The chameleon's slowness, though perhaps its inherent nature, served as a reminder that procrastination or undue deliberation in conveying crucial information can lead to missed opportunities and unintended lasting outcomes. The world they inhabited was a direct result of this cosmic race between speed and tardiness. Thus, the legacy of the two messengers lived on, not just in the reality of mortality, but in the cultural wisdom of the people. They remembered the antelope's swift, definitive declaration and the chameleon's slow, hopeful, but ultimately too late arrival. The story served as a constant reminder that life is shaped by moments, by messages, and sometimes by the simple, unalterable fact of who speaks first and who arrives too late. Olodumare's world was now one of cycles, of beginnings and endings, all because the antelope ran fast, and the chameleon, true to its nature, took its time on a journey of monumental consequence.